Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's WIN webinar, Building Your Personal Brand. My name is Traci Kantowski, and I'm one of the founding members of WIN and the programming co-chair. And I'm delighted to help moderate today's exciting webinar with our expert guest, Kathryn Janicek. Before we fully get started, I just want to give you a little background on WIN because some of you may not be familiar with it. WIN has a really important vision and mission. Our vision is to achieve economic and societal equity to change the global to change the global nutraceutical industry. And our mission is to empower women in nutraceuticals to unlock their personal and professional potential. And you may say, this is an organization for women. Why are there men in that picture? It's because we firmly believe that men need to be a part of this journey too. And we're very fortunate to have men in our leadership positions with WIN and supporting us along the way as members. So whether you're a man, woman, or identify differently, please be a part of this organization. We welcome everyone. WIN was established in 2022 with a board of directors, so we're a pretty new organization. We had explosive growth in 2023, gaining many sponsors, partners, and members. And in 2024, we are up to around 500 members. We have over 90 volunteers, and we are still a primarily volunteer-led organization, 7 committees, over 4,000 LinkedIn followers, super engaged community. We'd love, if you're not already a part of the organization, to join us to make a difference together. Let's increase the number of women on corporate boards, the women leading in C-suites and serving in executive leadership. We want to expand investment opportunities for women. We'd love to see more female-led businesses. We want to ensure the growth of women in science, more funding for female-led research, and more research on women. And we want to ensure better opportunities for rising female leaders. A couple quick housekeeping items, and then we'll get to the full program. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand. If you are a WIN member, you can go to the member portal and access it. We have a Q&A. Kathryn has generously offered to answer questions, and we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can live. Please use the Q&A box. That allows us to track those questions. And please use the chat if you have any technical issues. We'll go ahead and try to help you. So let me ask you a quick poll question before we get started. And we want to know how many of you feel that you already have developed your personal brand. And I'm going to pop this live. Just give me 1 second. And tell us, have you already developed your own personal brand and you're just here to maybe get a little bit of additional advice? Are you trying to develop one, but you're not quite there? Do you want to develop, but you don't know how? Or what is a personal brand? Kathryn is going to be able to answer all those questions. I'll give it a few more seconds. All right, let's share the results. So 24% of you have developed a personal brand. 33% are trying, but not quite there. 24% want to, but don't know how. And 19% aren't sure what a personal brand is. So wherever you are on that journey, we're going to be able to answer those questions. And so without further ado, I am, looks like we have an extra guest on screen. So I'm just going to turn that off. But I'm delighted to welcome Kathryn Janicek. Kathryn is a 3-time Emmy Award-winning executive leadership trainer. Her company, Janicek Performance Group, has coaches nationwide, training CEOs, thought leaders, and companies for more impactful media interviews and public speaking. Kathryn personally trains healthcare CEOs, several medical associations, and physicians from Yale, Harvard, and others. She recently received the 2024 Chicago Titan 100 CEO Award and the 2023 Enterprising Women of the Year Award. And I'm honored to also know Kathryn personally, and those on the call are part of the nutraceutical industry. And I have to tell you that Kathryn is like our ideal consumer. She lives and breathes wellness for her family, herself, her clients. And so it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you, Kathryn, to the virtual stage.
Thank you, Traci. Thank you so much. It is you. You're right. You know, I wasn't always this vigilant, I would say, about my health. I definitely spent the majority of my 20s and 30s pretty much probably abusing my body like so many people do. And now I'm trying to reverse that, right? Like, think about all the things that we were taught as women in the society, that you have to be a certain number, and that so many of us did so much cardio and like try to run our, you know, our food off, right, to be a certain number. And now I find myself, you know, nearing 48. I'll be 48 in a week. And I'm like trying to eat as much protein as I possibly can. I am lifting so many weights every single day. My team knows, you know, our team at Janicek Performance Group is here on the call too. And they know that I'm at Orange Theory every single morning at 5:30. That is not an endorsement of the company or whatever. They're not a sponsor, but like, that is the easiest thing for me, is to have someone boss me around every morning, right? Than me try to figure it out at the gym. But I cannot tell you the impact it's made on my life. The ability, you know, the jury's still out. I don't know for sure, but I definitely embraced this while I was trying to have a child. I went through 5 rounds of IVF. And I decided at that moment that everything had to change in my life. And I'm one of those like all in kind of people, right? Read some books, talk to some doctors, and I'm in, right? And it has changed my anxiety levels. It has changed my, you know, this health journey. It has changed my journey with being able to lead teams. And it's definitely changed our leaders who we train. So we have a firm called Janicek Performance Group, and we train leaders inside of Fortune 500 companies. We train leaders inside of healthcare organizations. And Traci, you're absolutely right. You know, the things that I've learned, I'm trickling down to the people, these leaders, and they're able to go, wow, I didn't know that by embracing some of these things or changing what I eat on the road when I'm, you know, this harried schedules that they have, and changing the things that I do on a daily basis. Wow, my brain works so much better. And it's really cool. So thanks for having me here. This is really great. I'm super passionate, especially about, I know that there's men in the group. I know that, but there's key things that women, we found when we go inside organizations, are not doing for their brand. And it is hurting us, right? It is, I don't want to speak for all women, but I'll just speak for myself. And maybe you listening to this can relate. But how many of us just do the job, right, that we're supposed to do? You know, you get into the work and you work so hard for that employer and you just do the job, but you're not, you know, what I didn't do is, when I was in TV for 25 years, I didn't necessarily network outside of my organization, right? I did my job. I was a good worker. I was a busy, you know, busy bee. I did everything my boss ever asked me to do, but I wasn't looking for, you know, what other opportunities could happen later in life, or, you know, networking. And I learned really quickly at my second to last W-2, at my second to last job, that I needed to build that personal brand. So it's so interesting for those of us who answered that poll question, do you have a personal brand? The answer for all of us is, you have a personal brand. No matter what, you have a personal brand. You just might not really be aligned with that personal brand. So if you're not, you know, if you're not showing up, if if your LinkedIn headline says something, but you're really so many other things, your personal brand is talking for you, even though you think like you don't have a personal brand. We all have a personal brand. We all have it. So let me share I want to share some kind of tips with all of us, just some things that we can do. And just, do we see my screen? Is it good? I think we can. That's great. The first and foremost tip is,
Looks good.
Good. Thank you, Traci. The first and foremost thing is, you have a personal brand. One of the things, you know, inside of our company, so Janicek Performance Group, we do media training, public speaking, coaching, executive presence, anytime you have to show up in front of one person or a million people, how you impact the room with your communications. And one of the things that we found through so much research is that you impact the room when you just walk into the room, right? 55% of your communications is your body language. almost 40% is your voice and your tone, and really only like 7% to 10% is what you say. And so think about your digital brand. People see that before you ever walk into a room. So people are going to look you up. They're going to look at your picture. You want to make sure that that aligns with what you look like now, all that good stuff, because so many people will say, like, I love that picture from 20 years ago. It doesn't matter. You want to make sure that you align with what you look like now and the digital piece, that personal brand. And I want to mention that if you want to, we would really like to give a special one-on-one coaching session with someone, from WIN. We are a WBENC. We're a women-owned company, 100%. The majority of our team are females, and it's something I'm really proud of. I don't specifically hire women. It's just that it has worked out that way. And we're really proud of the work that we do specifically for female executives in healthcare. So if you, in the chat, if you drop us your email address, we're going to collect those, and we're just going to give somebody a special session on this personal brand piece. Okay. So we're going to go through your LinkedIn and all of your digital brand and give you some great tips, because this is what we do when we sit inside of these organizations and work with CEOs and C-suite and directors and VPs and all that good stuff. So my background is 25 years in television. And then 10 years ago, I started this company, this firm. And now we have coaches. We coach all across the world. And why TV to this is because in television, I taught people how to captivate an audience for 2 seconds to 30 seconds to 5 minutes to pass the commercial break. And that's what I do for people like you. I make sure that people can stay attracted to your message and they want to keep talking to you, right? Part of that is the personal brand. It helps us establish that credibility, build trust, and create that unique professional identity. We have got to work on this. It's a living organism. Your LinkedIn, your Instagram, your Facebook, wherever you want to live, your X, your Twitter, formerly known as, you have this unique professional identity. You got to use it, right? So if you're used to be on Twitter and you're no longer there and it's turned to X and you've just kind of left it alone and you haven't posted anything for a year and a half, that is a reflection on you, right? That shows you just kind of let this die. If you have no bio there, it kind of makes it look like you're not in the know, right? You don't know what to do. So we just want to always make sure that we're making sure that these are this is a living organism. Make sure you're in there, you're updating it constantly. We go into organizations all the time and people don't have their current job there, They've gotten so busy. They're a PhD doctor. They run a lab somewhere. We're in world-renowned organizations and they haven't put their current job up there. I'm going to tell you, more times we see that with women than men. More times we see, I was literally at the New York Blood Centers 3 weeks ago, and they are in there solving, they're trying to find the solution for sickle cell anemia, and they're doing so much stem cell research, and they're doing so much amazing work and making sure that hospitals all over the country have the blood that they need for cancer patients and women who have babies and need the blood and all that good stuff. And, there are some women in there who run the lab, who are in charge of, solving sickle cell, these terrible diseases. And they don't have doctor up at the top of their LinkedIn. They don't have PhD. They just have Jane Doe, and they just go on, and you wouldn't know that they have gotten a PhD until you go down into their university experience. And then you see that. I had to dig for it. So sometimes, I go in calling somebody something, and then I find out, an hour later, I'm like, shoot, this is a doctor. She never had it out there. She never was, I don't know if it's proud enough or it felt like it was important or just got busy or there was too much modesty, but just, you got to make sure that those titles are out there. And here's why it's so important. I saw some of you follow me in the last week as this was being promoted, and a lot of you have PhDs. There is so much misinformation in healthcare right now. So much. It makes me crazy. There are people out there who don't have certifications and degrees and the education that some of you have. And if you don't stand out, if you don't make sure that you're out there so a journalist can see you or somebody else who needs this information, you're not going to be that credible resource that someone grabs and quotes and talks to in interviews or brings on a keynote, for a keynote on a stage, but they're going to get someone else who has less experience, less credibility. Do you want that to happen? I definitely don't want that to happen. I don't want it to happen to you. I don't want it to happen to the human race. I want people to get the information that's super credible. Also, journalists are polled every single year by an organization called Cision. And Cision has shown that journalists are really struggling with finding credible resources. And journalists in the last couple of years, and you all know why, they've been called fake news for several years now. And they are struggling with being seen as a credible resource. So journalists definitely, they're desperate to find really credible resources. So show up on LinkedIn, make sure that everybody knows your credentials and how amazing you are. Optimize those LinkedIn headlines so everybody knows those pieces of you that are incredible and that stand out. For example, we had a neurologist we trained last year specifically because she wanted to get on bigger platforms like CNN and stuff and not just, local news. And we made sure that we showed that she studies, she's actually an assistant professor at Yale. So Yale became one of those things in that optimized headline. She didn't have it before, we have it now. She actually didn't have PhD before either, and we made sure to add that. But there's all those kinds of things you want to make sure that those are optimized, right? Strong personal brand influences your career growth, your networking, your industry influence. For sure does. It shows you as a thought leader. You will be asked to be, shown, do keynotes, do breakouts, you're going to be asked to do more panels if you have a good, strong personal brand. I'm not going to name the names, but when I was at NBC Universal in Chicago, I was an executive producer and I was also a social media lead then. And this was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years ago. I think we just had Instagram and Facebook at the time and LinkedIn. And I pressured these on-air people in Chicago big time to build their brand. I had people in the audience like Ginger Z, Paula Ferris, a lot of people who went on to network, but I was struggling. I was trying to figure out how do I make them also take on this part-time job, which was building a personal brand digitally. And I pleaded with them and I said, I promise you, if you build this here, you will get a network job or you will be seen, you'll be able to ask for more money because you'll have all these followers. And guess what's also going to help you because you'll take all these followers forward to the next job and the next job and the next job. And you'll have this built-in community and this built-in audience that will buy from you or follow you or donate money or invest in you, whatever it is that you're doing. We do a lot of fintech work and a lot of finance. So that donation, that investment and stuff that comes into play. But building that strong personal brand really influences your career growth, your networking. You can ask for more money because you have a fan base. You don't have to be an Instagram influencer who is walking around with the lights and all this stuff and doing videos every single day. But as a professional, you having that platform and being seen as that thought leader and sharing things on your LinkedIn, for example, a few times a week, it really makes you stand out and you're seen as that influencer inside of your industry for sure. So what do you share? You want to think about what am I known for? What do you want to be known for? Where can you find the white space, right, in what you do? So is there some white space out there? Are there things that people aren't talking about that you can talk about? What is missing, right, in the conversation? Or if it's not missing, what do you bring that it has a different kind of take to it? What are your strengths and unique selling points? I'm going to tell you the majority of people, when I started this, media coaching and public speaking training company, the majority of people I saw who were doing this work were older guys who were anchors at CNN or somewhere like the network, and they were doing this training. And I found that I stood out because I was a woman and I also had different experience, right? I trained the anchors and the reporters inside of these organizations. I wasn't the talent that was being trained, right? So I made sure to try to make that a known thing, that I was an executive producer and not an anchor who was being trained by people like me, right? I also bring in some personal stuff because people don't just want to be sold to, like, you gotta eat your kale for lutein, you gotta do this. Like, people don't want to constantly get that, but like, how can you wrap it into a personal story and bring in your own personal stuff? And I'm not saying you have to always, show you feeding your kids food. I had a conversation with my husband a couple of weeks ago, and he said, can we back off using our daughter so much? Because he, rightfully so, social media is not the safest place to be throwing our kids, right? So because I've kind of leaned on that a little bit to spice things up and show my personality, because I have a child, I'm an older mom, so I talk about that. And I also try to relate to the female executives who are balancing not only the career, managing a spouse, that's a big management thing too. And then also managing a small person in the home, right? There's a lot that as female executives that we manage that maybe, or especially as parents, other people don't manage, right? And so I want to show that I can relate to that, right? I don't have all the time in the world to fit everything in. I'm not cold plunging at 5 a.m. like a lot of other founders and CEOs and stuff. I've got to, get ready and get my child out the door for school, right? So make sure to show, like, what is your brand? Who are you? How can you stand out? There's an incredible C-suite exec. She's like the social media head at Nike. And she did an incredible job starting in the pandemic talking about, she sure does show up in Nike clothing, in Nike, wardrobe. She's always got her gym shoes on. She posts when she goes to the gym at noon. She talks about making sure to take her personal time, that it's unbendable. She has to work out every day for her mental health and all that. But she really has come out as a thought leader when it comes to parenting and also being in the corporate world. So one of her posts 2 days ago was, this doesn't add up. We legally have to drop our kids off to school between 7:30 and 9:30 a.m. Yet most corporate meetings start between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. How does this work? And you can't get a babysitter for 1 hour a day to drop off your kids. Like, who's going to commit to that, right? People want full-time work or part-time work, many hours a week, not 1 hour Monday through Friday. So she's become a real thought leader in that. And it's way more effective than just talking about how incredible Nike is. So think about, what you can drip in there. I had a CEO of a big biotech company, and dude, 52 years old. He was like, I don't know how to use my LinkedIn. And I dripped some stuff to him. I'm like, tell me about what your kids are doing. When are you going to see them at college and stuff? And he said, like, my daughter's a star soccer player. I'm like, great. Next Sunday, when you go to see her watch a game, you're going to brag about her. You're going to brag about the whole female team, how proud you are, talk about their leadership qualities, whatever it is. But he started doing that. Oh my God. I can't tell you the ripple effect. Like, it is amazing. People inside of his company saw all the layers to his onion and thought, like, oh, you're an incredible dad. You're, incredible. Like, this is so great. He was still staying within his brand, but he was also showing, like, I'm a cool dad who flies to his, daughter's college on the weekends and goes and supports her. And then I'm so proud. I want to post pictures of her on my, my professional LinkedIn. But he ties it into a kind of a leadership thing. He's a CEO, he's a leader, and he was a publicly traded company. And so we're really careful inside of banks and all these things, but you can do it. When I started coaching a huge bank years ago, they said, we're not allowed to do anything on our personal brand. We're not allowed to talk about this bank. We're not allowed to, we're highly regulated. And I was like, let's really talk about this, because they were so told that, for so long that it's highly regulated. You have to have everything approved. When I started asking them, like, what would you share? Like, they're not going to share trade secrets, about their bank, but we really showed the executives about all the cool stuff they can share, like all the nonprofit work they do. And they show up and give a talk at in a theater because they give money to the theaters in Chicago. It's so different than sometimes we're told that we can't do things or that it won't, be approved. But you can do things that still are very professional, but also can be super storytelling. It can be really, really effective with getting people to follow you. It really is amazing. So why do you do it, right? You want to get return on investment for what you do because this is time consuming. My goodness, I have an outside company who I've hired who helps us with our social media. And I'm still, because I'm a little bit of, I wanted to make sure that it's very much in our voice and perfect. I spend an extra hour and a half a week really approving those posts and looking at them and making sure that they're great. But I only do it because I've set smart goals, and we've all set smart goals in our lives. When we work out or we're going to change our nutrition or whatever it is, what are the things that we want to get out of it? Same thing with your personal brand. What are your specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals, right? So I want to reach 20,000 new followers on LinkedIn. I'm at about 17,000 right now. And I know I want to do that by the end of this year. I want to capture 2 more clients because of our LinkedIn post, right? I got UPS a couple years ago because I share videos every single week. And just, if you follow us on LinkedIn, you can just find, Janicek Performance Group or Kathryn Janicek on LinkedIn or Instagram. Facebook is fine too, or Twitter. We put out free tips every single day when it comes to your communication. And I send out a video every single week on our mail, on our email, and it goes out on LinkedIn and everywhere. And UPS said, I need you to come in and train all of our executives because they saw the videos I was putting out there. So please don't, if you've got a company, if you're, I saw several of you have your own company, that please don't gatekeep, right? Don't think like, oh, I have to keep all this information to myself or to the people who pay for it, because people won't find you and pay you for the information unless you're out there teaching, right? So constantly be teaching out there in your personal brand, on your digital brand. And identify your target audience. I don't talk to everybody. I'm not necessarily talking to people graduating from college, for example. Someday we're going to do much more of that because I have dreams of, having college classes and stuff, because I feel like if we can get more people who are 21, 22, we can really move the needle in their career. We get majority of people who, who can afford to coach with us, right? 40s, 50s. And so I don't specifically talk to people in their early 20s. I shouldn't say that. We have definitely people in their late 20s, 30s, and 40s, but I don't talk to, recent college grads, for example. You don't want to broadcast. You really want to, come up with your niche and what's your, narrowcast, right? Who is your audience? Who do you want to reach? What do they, what are they all about? There are some really cool people I follow on Instagram, and just one I keep thinking about because it's so niche, it's so narrow casting, and it's perfect. She's like, in her bio, she's like, I'm a former female college athlete, and I am here to help wellness and nutrition for other female former college athletes. And it's very specific. It's like, you may have gone on and become a mom and let your health go and let your fitness go, and I'm here to help you get back to your college athlete days. And it's so perfect. I wasn't a college athlete, but I still follow her stuff. And guess what? She's talking specifically to those female athletes. So they see her as an expert beyond, before any of these other people who are just talking in general that they're going to help people with their fitness. So really think about how specific you can get. I coached a big company that's in Target and all these, they have a product, right? It's a wellness product. It's a applesauce and some other snacks that are specifically for kids, for their brains. So it has lutein in there, it has omega-3s, it has all these things that are sometimes hard to get your kids to eat, right? Like I know if I get my daughter to eat salmon a couple times a week, broccoli, I'm kind of lazy, unfortunately. I just do broccoli every night or Brussels sprouts because I just cannot try to think about anything else. And there's protein, right? But I know, and I give her omega-3s in the morning because I know I need it. So I know she needs it. I've been told with my blood and work, I need to always take my omega-3s every day. So I'm like, hey, she's genetically mine. She's going to be taking omega-3s starting at 2 years old. I started, or 1. But, this guy specifically made a snack it was like preschool age and on, but he was really targeting preschool. And it was for, we put all these things in for their brains to help make sure they can study better and retain information at school. And I helped him tell his message on the Today Show in Good Morning America. And we specifically talked to parents, parents, you need to go buy this at Target. Parents, here's why it will specifically help your kids. Now, Could I eat it? Have I eaten it and probably gotten all the benefits? Absolutely. But it's very targeted to those key stakeholders, which are parents of little kids who it's really hard, right? Like he would talk to the camera. It's like, it's really hard to get your kids to eat salmon and broccoli, but I've got this applesauce for you that I've loaded it up with these things. You know, my family's full of neurologists and we figured out that we need this, you know, we need this kind of snack in your hands, you know, after school and all that good stuff. So please think about your target audience and only talk to those folks. Same thing when we're talking about the media. When you're looking, you know, when you're reaching out to the media, you want to look at like who does stories like you and who has your audience. You may not be an MSNBC or a Bloomberg News audience, right? You might not be talent for those or a story for those channels. Definitely our crypto companies, our fintech companies that we coach, our wealth advisor, you know, clients, they want to be on MSNBC and Bloomberg News and all those. But you might, you know, want to talk to Today's Show, Good Morning America, your local morning show where folks are watching and really attentive to that hour. So really got to think about that in all stakes, you know, in all places, you know, where's your target audience watching? Where are they getting information? And that's the only place you have to really focus on. I don't sit there and look at my Facebook messages all the time, but I really focus on like Instagram and LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn because my client is on LinkedIn. Also, you want to craft that brand story. You know, I talked about this, like bringing in things that are about you, you know, developing that compelling narrative that showcases your journey, your values, and your vision. I took a huge risk last week and I waded into that whole football player speaking at Benedictine. And it took a huge risk. It was successful as far as engagement stuff. Did I get a lot of nasty comments too? Absolutely, I did. But it was very much like, for me, I was very driven to do it. And mind you, I'm not an employee. I own a company. So I can take a risk like that. And I know that, you know, maybe a company might not want to work with me because I said, you know, I used IVF and this guy came out against IVF and I was upset about that, you know, and it was the only choice that I had with my husband and I, because he had cancer and I knew we had to do IVF to have a child and I wanted to have a child. So I was mad at him, right? Now, you might not be able to take those kinds of risks. Maybe you have to play it a little safer and you can't come out and talk about that stuff. But if you can, I will tell you, taking some of these kinds of risks really helps grow your personal brand more than being safe all the time and just showing like graphic tips. This gave us a lot more engagement than our normal graphic tips for sure. Now, you know, some other things is, you know, Traci and I were talking, you know, via email. I also shared a video about, you know, I help people enunciate better and really tell their message and make sure they're not mumbling their words and making sure that they sound enthusiastic and passionate. And one of those things that I found helped me was reading Dr. Seuss books to my daughter. So I posted on my LinkedIn and our Instagram about me reading her Dr. Seuss books, because I realized, my goodness, that is a really good example of what anyone can do. Read really quickly, read loud, read quiet, use little voices, because when you present on a stage, when you talk to your teams, you have to be captivating. You have to grab that audience and keep them and keep pulling them back when they start to thinking about something else. So those little tips I share on Instagram and LinkedIn, and those stand out. And it's not just me staring at a camera, giving a tip. You know, I showed some video of me actually reading to my daughter too. But think about things that you can kind of play around with your brand and visually show things, right? People want a visual. They don't just want a graphic. They want to see you talking. They want to see you showing them something. Those videos are always going to be the biggest things that are going to get you the most attention on your personal brand. And you want to make sure to leverage your social media. So when we talk about building it, then you also want to leverage it. So how can you use your social media? You can get information. So sometimes I will, you know, if I'm going to go and train an organization or do some kind of presentation or a brand new class I'm creating, I might poll my audience and ask, you know, what is your burning question when it comes to getting a story of yours in the media? Or what is your burning question when it comes to alleviating anxiety before you get up on a stage or whatever it is? And we leverage our social media that way. We also use it to, like I said, get new clients. We have many clients who have leveraged their social media by building their company. They left a major university, a major hospital, and they started a private practice, and they leveraged that social media. And it's super, super important. You're also going to use your personal brand for networking and mentorship. You can find mentors this way. You can mentor those if that is something that you want to do. I mean, obviously all of us want to do more mentoring, right? Or should do more mentoring, but there's so much value in finding those mentors. And some of us are not doing that great. I did not really tap into that in my 20s and 30s, but I have found that there are people who are in their 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, who reach out to me now. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to give you some advice, because I just think you have a lot of guts and charisma and awesomeness to go and reach out to someone, to have the courage to reach out to a professional and ask questions and ask for mentorship. That's wonderful, because gosh darn it, I fault myself for sure for not doing that in my early years. So definitely that personal brand helps you do that. And let's be honest, like, you mentoring someone younger, that could be a potential new employee of yours someday, or shoot, could be your next boss in 10 years. So there's always such good reasons, beyond the altruistic reasons, to mentor, for sure. But use mentorship too as networking, right? Like, it's so, so important to build your network and your mentorship skills, for sure. And then also, when you show up with that amazing personal brand, you're going to be seen as a thought leader. We get requests to do keynotes, and I get requests, this is me speaking to 300 women inside the Homeland Security, So these were women who were police sergeants and ICE and sheriff, and they're protecting our country. And I was lucky enough to help them, when it comes to empowering themselves inside and really moving into higher leadership positions inside of law enforcement. And it was really important for me, but they would not have found me unless I was sharing thought leadership things on my LinkedIn. I was found out because of what I share on LinkedIn. So I just want to tell you, this stuff works, right? And then make sure you're building that strong online presence. And that means your website too. If you want to have some kind of SEO expert look at that, but there's also really great plugins out there. But having that website is super important. It's kind of like, here's the big deal. Like, if you're going to have social media, if you have that personal brand, where are you going to send people, right? So make sure you're constantly sending people to your website, because Instagram and LinkedIn can go away tomorrow. Okay. And that's really important to remember, is that, when we had this doctor, we made sure we were collecting email addresses. So when she did switch, when she did open up her own private practice, we were able to email everybody very quickly. And we'll talk more about her in a second. But your strong online presence. So here's just a couple examples. I was alluding to this earlier about your optimized headline, and I wanted to show an example in case folks in the audience didn't know what that is. This is I'm saying a good example of an optimized headline. This is mine, so I'm not picking on any client of ours. I'm a 3-time Emmy winner, media and public speaking and executive presence strategist and trainer for Fortune 500 leaders. Like, I'm calling out my audience, right? And healthcare and startups. I want people to know, if you are looking at this and you're in this group, I am, this is what I do, right? I put out some awards there. I'm really proud of the volunteer work I do with the International Women's Forum, which is all over the world. I'm a professional speaker. So you really want to call that stuff out. If you've ever spoken on a stage, you're a professional speaker. If you've ever made money speaking, you're a professional speaker. So put it out there if that's something that you want to be asked to do more of. Make sure it's there, okay? And then turn on those followers. We don't just want to have how many connections you have. Go into your settings and show how many followers you have, because it also shows you as a thought leader, especially as those numbers go up and up and up. I definitely have more on LinkedIn than I have on Instagram, but I put a very concerted effort on LinkedIn. I'm just not I'm just not an Instagram influencer. And I do not have the time to do a video every single day, which is really what you need on Instagram to really move that needle. And some of you do, and some of you will find that that's where your audience is. So that's where you really need to push. Just like TikTok, I'm not put a concerted effort there. I'm also a little, I don't want to put all my eggs there right now when I don't know if it's going to exist here, next year, right? We don't know. Here's a little bit of some of our success when it comes to women in healthcare. We specifically, I want to, Dr. Lynn O'Connor, she was somebody I was alluding to earlier. She was at a big organization and they didn't treat her the best, right? And thank God the last year that she was with this organization, we were constantly creating her personal brand because when she left her organization, she was not able to bring her clients with her, right? She's a colorectal surgeon. And that she couldn't just like send a mass email out and say, hey, I'm moving into my own private practice. Come follow me here. Totally against the contract. Couldn't do that. But she had built this beautiful personal brand. Like we were working on her LinkedIn and her Instagram and her Facebook big time. This was 10 years ago we started. So it was really all about Facebook, and her audience is really all about Facebook. So we're building that. So when she was ready and she moved and opened her private practice, all we did was announce, hey, got a private practice, and boom, people started finding her we had the address put out there, all that good stuff. But it's because we created that social media brand for her, and we had that, the website going, right? It's basic stuff, but we've got to do that to protect your future, right? To protect you. So, and there's details here, but, it was great. Like now, since she built that brand, she's landed, she's been on CNN, MSNBC, or CNN, GMA, Good Morning America, Today Show. She got this huge new position inside the New York Police Department as a actual certified and honored surgeon. So it's huge. She went from fewer than like 10 followers to she's got over 5,000. She launched that private practice and she really leaned into video, and it got us a ton of national news segments. So it's really, really important. And part of this is also with everybody I work with is overcoming obstacles. We really have to make sure that I mentioned this, like overcoming some criticism, et cetera, because sometimes I post things and people aren't very nice, right? I have to focus in on my why big time in order for me to keep doing it. Because if I just focused on somebody criticized me or literally someone put on my Instagram last week that I was a sow and they were glad I couldn't have children because he thought I was terrible that I was talking about IVF on my Instagram, that could have definitely made me revert into my basement for a very long time and just say, I'm never going to do a video again. But I didn't, because I focused in on my why. And I wanted other women to see that you could have success with this if that was a journey you wanted to be on, right? If you wanted to have a child and didn't have success other ways, there are other options for you. And it's really important to me because no one talked about it when I was doing this, 6-7 years ago when I was doing IVF, and I wanted to talk about it. Women only apply for a role if they feel like they're 100% qualified. Men apply to roles if they meet 60% of the requirements. I want you to see this. So if you think that you're not an expert, I want you to think again, because somebody else is thinking that they're an expert. Women underestimate their abilities and their performance. Women worry more about being disliked, appearing attractive, or grabbing too much attention. That comes from Cornell. This is highly studied. We want to make sure that you're building your personal brand and not letting your mindset limit you, okay? And then also in a year, after you really boost this, start working on your personal brand, see if there was success. Were there any new awards? Were there more followers? You want to make sure to look at that to make sure, am I committing the amount of time I want to, or am I committing too much time and I'm not getting return on investment, whatever. I'm going to tell you, you can't not get the return on investment if you do this right? Just because of the brand, people reached out to me and I got a new award last year that was brand new in Chicago, and it was only for, CEO founders of companies. And they wouldn't have known that I existed unless I was, making sure I promoted our company inside of LinkedIn and everywhere. So it's really important. So first is make sure you understand that you have a personal brand. Assess your current brand. What is it? What is it saying to people? Set your goals. Identify your key stakeholders, like who do you want to talk to? Craft your brand story. Leverage that social media for sure, and then engage in that networking and mentorship. You are a thought leader. Build that strong online presence, build your case studies, overcome challenges, measure, remember those challenges I just talked about, right? Measure your success, and then always aim for continuous improvement. That continuous improvement is super, super important. Look at your stuff. Get somebody to take a look at it and give a critical eye who's not just a yes person who just say, it's beautiful, you're doing a great job. Get a critical eye on that. And then also feel free to follow us and build your network. We will follow you back for sure. Our team will, if you would like to follow us on any of the social media platforms, right? And it's super important, like I said at the beginning, is to make sure you stay updated with industry trends. You want to make sure that that bio is updated. You look like this is a living organism, that you have to constantly update these things. And so you just make sure you constantly look like you're in the know, and you're updated, and you know what's going on with industry trends. Okay, great. So now I'm going to actually lose the slides and see if there's any questions. Oh, thank you, Kantha. That was very, very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, Kathryn, thank you so much. That was outstanding. Couple quick housekeeping questions that have come in. For those that weren't able to copy the links over or didn't want to click out, you wanted to just remain focused on Kathryn, we will make sure that we provide all those hyperlinks to you with the on-demand, so that you can follow Kathryn, interact with her, etc. Kathryn, there also was a question about if your slides might be available with members in a gated format. And so that
Do that.
talk about that. Yeah. We would keep it just for WIN members, but they love to have maybe like a PDF of it to just reference back to in addition to the video.
You got it.
Awesome. And then I know that I've made a checklist of things I need to do after I get off this webinar for updating my own personal brand. Like on X, I am one of those people that had a Twitter, it converted to X, and it sits there and I retweet random things every once in a while, but that is something I definitely need to do myself. So we'll have to see. But yes, for those of you, if you didn't already drop your email in the chat and you want to be eligible for a one-to-one with Kathryn, please do that. Also, feel free to drop questions in the Q&A. And I do have a couple that I know were kind of submitted in advance as well. So, Kathryn, I guess there's a variety of people on this call, and some of them have done just an amazing job of pushing their own personal brand, and sharing kind of that mix of personal, their expertise, etc. But perhaps people are like dabbling in it, right? Where sometimes they go in and then they back out. Like, how can you remain committed and focused? And are there any tips? Like, you said you block off an hour and a half to review posts each week. Like, do you recommend blocks of time where you just sit there and say, this is what I'm a thought leader in, and this is what I should share? What do you recommend?
Well, first of all, is you all are walking around and finding content in your daily basis. Like you're seeing things like I should talk about this, right? Like, so when I coach a client, I might come off and say, oh my gosh, there were 3 great tips I gave today. I should really share that on a broader broader scope, out of my social media. You're also just seeing things like, just be looking for content. When I was reading, these Dr. Seuss books for years, I was working on that because I wanted to enunciate better. Rachel Karras on our team is a executive performance coach, and she specifically helps our clients make sure that they know how to warm up for, getting on stage or speaking in a meeting or whatever it is. Because if you walk up, into a meeting and you've got like mumble mouth or, marble mouth, or you mumble, or you drop the ends of your sentences because you didn't get the proper amount of breathing, we're all doing those things. Like, you don't even know you're doing it unless you record yourselves. She teaches that. And I was finding, as I read, these Dr. Seuss books to my daughter, I'm like, okay, I really need to work on this. And if you've ever read Dr. Seuss, like, it is hard to read. So find things like that I was like, oh my gosh, this would be great to share with people. So I just, shot a little video with my iPhone of me reading to her. And then I did I went the extra, where I shot a little intro and then an outro of the video, but you don't have to do that. You can literally just show a 20-second clip of you doing something and say, here's what I do. Hey, every morning, I bet the majority of people here are making a smoothie for themselves with like kale, and you're putting in your extra fiber and you're adding all your stuff in there, or you're taking, gosh, I choke down like 6 omega-3 pills every morning, right? My fish oil, like I'm just like, I barely, get them down. But there's a video of you doing something like that. And then you write in the caption or you write on the screen why you're doing it. Like, what was your health journey? My specific health journey is I have autoimmune disease rampant in my family. My grandmother died at 75 with ankylosing spondylosis, which I can never pronounce. My aunts have terrible arthritis. My mom lost her eyesight at 59 and they think it's an autoimmune disease. So I talk about this stuff, but I explain it's because of this, right? There is a link. And for you all, you can talk about your why, like why you got into it, and keep sharing that stuff. Like take video of you at the gym, and it doesn't necessarily have to be specifically about the nutraceutical that you educate on, but like you're at the gym and you're talking, that's all a part of your brand, right? Your online brand. So there's content everywhere. Like you just have to start thinking like that content developer. Okay, so some of you might be planting right now. It's May. I put my basil, my kale out. I put kale seeds out yesterday. You might do that. Like that's content, right? If you are in the lutein, if you're in the kale world, you want to make sure there's somebody who had an email that was like at greens something. Maybe that's something related to it. Take video of you gardening, and then update people every couple weeks of how the kale's doing. There's a million stories out there, right? You just have to start thinking like that.
That's great. Kathryn, also, we had a kind of 2 questions came in that are somewhat tied together, but some people don't want to go down the rabbit hole of social, or they're hesitant, right? They want to keep things private. So do you recommend, in terms of how do you choose which platforms? And if you already have like a personal account, maybe that's where you are just posting about your family. Like you and I are connected on social. On my personal one, it's pretty much every week pictures of my kids playing volleyball. And so,
Yeah.
but if I wanted to do something else, so the question was like, do I create something new, not tied to my personal? Like, should we have both? And which platforms, how do you decide which ones to focus on? Because I don't think the answer is the same for everybody, right? It's got to be where
Right.
you're willing to play and where your community is. Because if you're on X and nobody in your community is on X, it doesn't make sense to play there. But would love your kind of thoughts on those.
Yeah, let's just tackle Instagram for a second. If you're going to have a lockdown one, try to not be findable. So, because if someone looks for you, the problem is it potentially someone might wonder what you're hiding, right? Why does it have to be locked down? So if I was to have a personal one where I was just sharing pictures of my daughter, I would name it something completely different. Like maybe I would use my middle name, or I would use like, what I wanted to be my stage name. I don't know. I'm making stuff up, but I would try to not let it be findable by professionals inside of my organization. And then I would have a second one that is super findable. It's Kathryn Janicek, boom. And this is mine. But you can have a private one for your family, but just try to make it where it's not that findable. LinkedIn, just keep it, if you don't want to share anything personal, just keep it totally professional. But I will say, gone are those days where people are okay with us just selling things at them, right? So people buy from people, they don't buy from a brand. So if you are the founder, the CEO of a cool nutraceutical brand, you really do need to show up as a person. So showing you using those items, showing the why behind it. Your grandpa died of this, your grandma died of this, or whatever it is, and this is your mission in life. Making sure to share those stories, it's super important than just letting your comms team or your marketing team share random posts that are educational about science or, nutraceuticals. That won't work as well as really showing up as a person.
Yeah, and in this industry, I think that's really important to keep in mind, because we're very fortunate that this industry is very tight knit. We want to support each other, we want to help each other. And so showing that human element, I think, is really critical.
Yeah.
Um, There was a question about how do you handle changes in your personal brand and the type of content you share? Should you address it directly or just gradually shift without announcing it? So I think she's trying to get at, like, if you're maybe focused on one area, let's say you're focused on microbiome and you want to switch and you're now talking about prenatal nutrition, right? That's pretty different. There's some ties there. And maybe that isn't exactly what you were hitting at, to the person that asked that question, but in terms of if you're going to shift or maybe make a, drastic one, or even what you're doing with your business, maybe you're a writer and now you're going to be a consultant. um, do you announce it, or do you just, as she said, do that gradual shift?
I guess it depends how many followers you have. If we're talking about a platform with 10,000 followers, to slowly hey, I'm still really into this. I think it's incredible. I have just recently found out how incredible this is, or how, I'm really diving into this. I've been doing a lot of research on that, or I'm now at this company and I think it's whatever, but slowly maybe announcing it if you've got ridiculous amount of followers. I think that if you have, under 5,000 followers or something, maybe you can just slowly drip into it and, still be, you kind of go from doing microbiome and, maternal medicine or maternal nutrition. And then all of a sudden you like wean off the microbiome, right? Like now after several months, like that doesn't exist anymore, or several weeks. Or, it, just all of a sudden switching though is really jarring, right? And we're people. It's kind of like you got to think about it like, what if this happened in real in the nature, right? And you were talking about like if Traci and I were talking about something, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, by the way, I've got to go to this party tonight. It's like it's too random, it's not fair to the person. It's jarring. It's not natural. So think about what would be natural and do that. Lean into that.
Love it. There was a question, and I think that you addressed it somewhat, but let's just confirm. So it was a question about thoughts on female professionals mixing in posts of nutraceutical science, but then also personal stuff like a mammogram appointment. Is that, does that work in terms of providing that human element, or is that too separated?
I don't see why that's not, especially if, okay, so what is the number? 63% of women are making the decisions for buying things inside of the house. So let's be honest, folks, like who is buying the nutraceuticals? Who is buying the groceries? Who is making those decisions? I'm looking up where my husband does the Whole Foods order, right? He goes and picks it up. It's great. But do you think that I don't get in there right before, and I sway a little bit? I'm like, we don't really need that. Maybe we should have less corn tortilla chips and we should have more of this, or I really want to have, almond milk from now on and not just oat milk or whatever. There are numbers out there showing 63% of women are making those buying decisions inside of the household. So your audience are females for anybody, right? So, and women go, so if you feel strongly about this and you think that they're going to also feel like attached to you because of that, like, thank you for the reminder, and they might watch you more often because of that, that is great. If you can also tie it into like something where there's a product, a nutraceutical that is also proven to help prevent cancer, right? You could tie that in. Or if there's things that just boost those things in your body that prevent that from happening, or fight that. I don't know. I'm not, that deep into it. So you can look for those ties for sure. But just remember in general, for any product, it's the majority of women are buying it. So why not talk about a mammogram?
No, of course. And we are coming up to the end of the hour. So I'm going to end with this question that we got in asking, if you're working on your personal brand, let's say nutrition or just your personal brand, but you're working at a large CPG company, how can you navigate that on LinkedIn? So in terms of maybe you're looking to transition out, but you've got that CPG company overlaying, kind of overlooking what you're doing. How do you navigate that?
Well, I'd want to know where she's going next first, but you can just play on, like, if you're a leader inside of this, could you talk about just things leadership wise? Could you be sharing things? You don't, my goodness, you don't have to just talk about CPG, right? You can just totally avoid that if you know you're going to be weaning off of that, but you can still look to your company like, I am building this personal brand, because a lot of companies are giving us pressure to do this, right? But you're talking about other things. It could be leadership. It could be communicating well with your teams. It could be, showing up as an awesome professional. But there's too much content out there for you to go like, I'm not going to do anything because I don't want to talk about CPG anymore, because I don't know where I'm going to go next.
Yeah, well, and I think you can also work it in, because even if you're working at CPG or a small company within our industry in general, focused on nutrition, wellness, et cetera. And so there is still opportunity to work that in, because most of the companies we work for, their purpose is in doing good for the world, right? I used to do
Right.
PR for a beer company. Well, that was fun, but frankly, we weren't doing any good for the world, which is why I've spent the rest of my career on the nutraceutical side, because I want to help people. I want to bring wellness to them. But I do still enjoy a good beer every once in a while. So,
You made a
Kathryn,
good
we
switch.
are we are at the end of our time, and I just want to say thank you again so much for sharing your insights with us, for being so generous and offering to do a one-to-one session. I can't wait to find out who won. Um, and I guess we'll work with your team to get the email out to whoever that person is. And then
Yes.
any last takeaways that you want to share with this group before we sign off for today?
The biggest thing is, you have a personal brand. Go ahead and do a really critical look at that. Have someone, inside of your community look at that also and give you really honest opinion, and keep working on it. It's never done. It can constantly be reevaluated and switched up.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Well, if you're not following Kathryn, follow her today. It's kathrynjanicek.com. We'll share all her socials in the follow-up, and we hope you'll join us at the next WIN webinar. Keep an eye on the WIN website for that information. Kathryn, thank you again. Have a great day.
Thanks.